There is a genius campaign that is going on at the Olympic trials right now, and it's not Nike, it's not Adidas, it's not On Running. It is Bandit Running, a startup running company out of New York City who is beating Nike at their own game in their own backyard. But first, I'm Jordan. I spent 10 years in brand marketing at Nike. I left a couple of years ago, and now I teach sports marketing and branding to people like yourself. I made a video last week on this Bandit unsponsored project that is genius, that is happening at the Olympic trials right now. And it got almost 3 million views so far, but that was only 60 seconds. So I want to dive into what the program is, how sports marketing works in general, and then I want to teach you why this is so great and how they're able to do it through a couple of branding and marketing principles that I teach others regularly. So let's dive in. But before we do, thank you so much for tuning in. If you would be willing to like, comment, subscribe on this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Comment below, let me know what you want to hear more of or what you liked about this video, and send it to somebody who you think would enjoy this. Maybe the people who have the screws loose who love sports marketing to this degree. All right, let's jump in. So for the foundation of this plan, we need to understand how sports marketing works in general. And if I had to sum this up in one line, from a little bit of a cynical point of view, sports marketing works like, what have you done for me lately? At the core of marketing, we are trying to capture people's attention, and we are trying to attach ourselves to athletes who are getting the most visibility at the highest visible time. In track and field, that is traditionally around the Olympics. It's once every 4 years, so you have to strike while the iron's hot. And athletes are under immense amounts of pressure to be able to perform at these points in time. And brands are trying to grab on and make their bets with which athletes are gonna have the highest visible moments, who's gonna end up on the podium, and where are they gonna show up consistently and a good light for them. So typically that's winning on podiums. Secondly, that's gonna be social media, which athletes have the biggest following and who do social the best, as brands increasingly, their number one place that they're showing up is in social media. So there are a couple of factors, but ultimately, they just want the athletes who can win the most and who are helping reach the audiences that they're trying to reach. You will see a lot of support behind female athletes, women of color, by these bigger brands like Nike and Adidas and On and Hoka, as they try to expand their consumer base outside of the mostly males that they've founded and mostly footwear. And they're all trying to expand their apparel business and their business with women. So that's how sports marketing is generally working. I think that we're gonna see radical shifts, and Bandit is tapping into this ethos in a great way. We just saw Michael Johnson launched a year-round track and field professional league that will be going year in and year out. He knows all too well that for a lot of Olympic athletes and track and field athletes, they get to show up once every 4 years. And there's much more opportunity to gather around these athletes. I think track and field is the most slept on sport of all athletes. They have the most swagger, the most style, they have speed, which is what we're all obsessed with. Even if you look at other sports, we love the athletes who are the fastest. So we love wide receivers or running backs in football. In global football or soccer, we love the athletes who can get down the field the fastest or who can dribble the fastest. They have this speed and endurance that we all love. And so I think you're going to continue to see track and field get more love year in and year out, but we happen to be in Olympic year, so we are talking about the Olympic trials here. All right, next, let's talk about the Bandit unsponsored project and what it is. If we look at the way that the industry has been shaped, you're trying to sign the biggest stars, you're trying to lock them into a deal so that you can get the most exposure with them. You want to get an athlete potentially while they're younger, when they might be cheaper, so that then you can rise with them. And so who does that leave out? That leaves out older athletes, that leaves out athletes who maybe haven't performed at their best, that leaves out athletes who are not in the target demographic that these brands are trying to reach. There are all kinds of ways that these athletes can fall through the cracks, or maybe you're in a category or in a race division that is not going to get the most television coverage. Everybody wants to be a part of the 100, 200, 400 sprinters, but what about those distance running, pole vaulting, javelin, all these other types of sports? Enter Bandit in the Unsponsored Project. Bandit is a upstart running program out of New York City. They're a really cool brand. They do great creative. They've had great success with run clubs and this kind of grassroots movement that a lot of these bigger brands have not had success with. In fact, there was a Wall Street Journal article last week about how Nike has missed the running club boom that is going on all across the country that some of these smaller companies are tapping into, and Bandit is one of those. They just had their first retail location open, and this is the second year that they've done the Unsponsored Project. So what they do in the Unsponsored Project is they sign athletes for about 2 weeks and they give them apparel that is completely unbranded and black. And they do this for a couple of reasons, and I want to teach you some branding principles. But first, you can check out the Brand Brothers live stream that we had last week. You tap on the live button here on my channel and see the replay. We had Tim Rossi, who leads marketing from Bandit, break down this program for us and give us some insights. He called in straight from Eugene at the Olympic trials and shared some great nuggets, so I would highly encourage you to check that out. All right, here's a branding principle that I want you to really understand. If you get anything from this video, this is the one. Whether you are developing a personal brand or trying to figure out how to position your own brand or a brand that you work for, the number one aspect that we are looking for in a successful brand is to be distinct. I want you to take a look at this image. This is the image that I use when I teach this concept. You know more about branding than you think you know, I assure you. Which of these sheep gets a marketing deal? There you go, you know. And I think this image is actually perfect for this type of discussion as it relates to Bandit and the Unsponsored Project. We are always trying to look for how to be distinct in culture, in visibility, in places, because marketers know this is the sweet spot. We want to stand out because we are trying to get attention. And so when everyone is trying to stand out, what are the mechanisms that they're using? Let's take a look at any image from track and field. Brands are using loud, bright colors. They are using neon colors. They're using flashy designs, all in the name of trying to get attention. But when every brand is employing the same strategy, they all start to blend in together. So how would you stand out in an image like this? It's not unlike our sheep image here. If you were to take a all black, unbranded racing kit, you would be distinct in a sea of all bright, loud color prints and loud logos from other brands. And this is the subtle guerrilla genius that makes this so great. So that's the first element, is to be distinct, and Bandit is nailing it here. Here's a place where I got a lot of pushback. Some people said that a brand like Tracksmith already has a program like this. It's called the Amateur Support Program. And I've dug into it, and I love Tracksmith. I think we can do a future video on Tracksmith. If you've watched any of my content, you've heard me rave about Tracksmith, particularly their storytelling and their content and media. And I love their kits because I think they're actually great in this New England legacy brand, and their colors, the navies and the maroons and the gold. And so I think that Tracksmith is doing great things in the running space, but you apply for their program, and then once you get accepted into their program and they give you support, very similar to how Bandit does, they end up putting you in a branded singlet. And I would say that gives Bandit the slight edge. I just love this kind of guerrilla anti-logo project that they're doing in a world of logos and branding. And you can't fault any company for wanting to put their logo on the highest visible moments and on these athletes. I think it makes a lot of sense why you would want to do that. So that's how I think they're not quite as distinct as Bandit in this case. And if you love sports marketing like this, you want to be comparing brands like Bandit and Tracksmith and Nike and Adidas and Under Armour and Asics, you might want to check out my How to Get a Dream Job in Sports Marketing course. It's available in the link below. $97 gives you all my wisdom and very tactically how you might get in the door at one of these companies. It absolutely helped change my life to find a purposeful direction because I absolutely love this stuff and can't get enough of it. So check that out if you'd like. Okay, next. This is the second branding principle that I really want you to understand. And I start a lot of personal branding sessions with this prompt that is really hard for some people that I have in my workbook, but it is, what are you not? What are you not can really free us up from the struggle that a lot of us have when we look at all the other brands or all the other people in this world and we try to be like them. And so I think this is a human instinct. We all want to assimilate. We all want to fit in. And so generally we look around us and we try to do the things that those people around us are doing. This happens in brands. You start a running brand, you go, okay, what are the best brands doing? Let me see what they're doing. We're going to try to employ that. And I think this is a great example that you see on the track. Everybody is trying to sign the biggest stars. They're trying to put them in the brightest colors, the biggest logos. And so Bandit has done a beautiful job of assessing what they are and what they are not. And Tim talked about this on our podcast this last week. He said that they're not Nike, they're not Adidas, they don't have big budgets like that. They are still trying to help support these athletes. They have recognized what they are not. They are not the big brand with the big budgets that's going to be able to sign these athletes and support them year round. But what they are then is they can turn the page. Once we establish what we are not, you could then turn the page and say what we are. And what they decided that they are was like a New York running brand who really wants to support athletes in a meaningful way. They have a good edge to them. Maybe they are the black sheep in some ways, and they can do great creative. And so they sign these athletes to a 2-week deal. They provide them with travel expenses to be able to get to Eugene because it's very hard. They provide them with physio, some nutrition, a place to hang, and the gear that they need to perform. And then they say, we are putting you in this distinct uniform so that other brands can then see that you are not signed, to be clear that you are not signed. The cruel irony of the way that most runners actually have to approach this is they try to find a sponsor, and when they don't, they end up opting to wear one of those big brands' product because they want to wear a good product to show up on their race day. But if you are the marketing director for one of these other companies and you see this athlete cross the finish line in a Nike tank top or in Nike footwear or an Asics tank top, you might assume that they're already signed to that brand. And so the brand gets the best of both worlds. They didn't have to pay that athlete any money, and they still got the visibility and the association with that athlete winning. So they really didn't have to do anything in this scenario. The athlete, though, it ends up being a lose-lose. They didn't get paid, and they didn't get support from that brand, and yet they ended up doing what they were supposed to do, held up their side of the bargain by participating and winning and landing on the trophy on the medal presentation, but they still didn't get the support from the brand that they needed. And so this unsponsored project is a beautiful way of showcasing that. In fact, Bandit just had their first athlete make it to the Olympics. And in their Instagram post, they said, someone signed this gentleman. And so I love this. They've acknowledged what they're not, and then they've really embraced what they are and their role specifically in this instance. And here's one more branding principle you can think about. It's really a marketing principle and a life principle, which is where people struggle, we have the opportunity to serve. That could be used in your own experience. Where have you struggled in the past? How can you now serve people in that? I have my own experience of that, recovering from heroin addiction. After a year of incarceration 20 years ago, I've then dedicated a lot of my life to recovery and flipping around and trying to help other people get out of that scenario. I've realized that really applies to business and how we serve our consumers as well. Where our consumers and customers struggle, we have the opportunity to serve them. And so many sports brands are not really thinking about this original principle that Nike started with, which is we are here to serve the athlete. And that was the ethos that is plastered on every wall at Nike World headquarters. That was the start of it, is trying to serve the athlete in a better way. And I think a lot of people have gotten lazy and said our way to serve the athlete is to put them in our best product, our loudest product, and to show up at the brightest moments. And Bandit has come in here, rethought it, showed up in a distinct way, embraced who they are, acknowledged what they are not, and occupied this space of the pie, which says for these 2 weeks, we're going to show up, we're going to serve you, and then we want you to go off and spread your wings and fly. I guarantee you that these athletes will have a deep brand affinity for Bandit. And when the time comes, they might want to come back and ride with that brand, but they will always have an affinity for Bandit, whether they win or lose. All brands show up for athletes when they win. Not enough brands are showing up for athletes when they lose or when they struggle. And I think you would have deep, deep will with these top athletes in the world if you show up for them when they're struggling and when they're losing, because everybody shows up when they win. So we need to be distinct by showing up when not everybody else will. All right. That is our deep dive here on Bandit and the unsponsored projects. It's absolutely brilliant. I love to see it. Let me know what you like or didn't like here in the comments below, or what you want to hear about more before. Like this video, subscribe, and send it to a friend if you think somebody would really like this or appreciate this. I appreciate you tuning in. If you like these branding principles, I also have a branding and blessings workshop that I teach where I go through an hour workshop session where you will receive a booklet like this, downloadable PDFs, where I'm gonna guide you through what are you not, what are you, what are your strengths and skills, and how can you lean into those to eventually serve other people with the platform that you have and the experiences that you've been through. It is for any person who wants to have an impact in life, not just if you're trying to grow on social media or be famous. That's not what this workshop is for. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.